This is a co-production of The Appeal and Now This. I'm Jay Willis. This afternoon, we're returning to our series, Our Future on the Ballot, talking to candidates for office from across the country about what they stand for, what they don't, and what they hope to do if elected this fall. My guest today is Lorenzo Sanchez, a candidate to represent the 67th District in the Texas House of Representatives. That's an area north of Dallas that includes Plano. That seat is currently held by a Republican, Jeff Leach, as are most of the seats in the Texas House. But Lorenzo is part of a group of candidates who are trying to change that by appealing to working people and families, running on issues like expanding Medicaid and providing more funding for public education. Lorenzo, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me today. Tell me what's been happening in the past few years in Texas that makes you think it might become less of a stronghold for Republicans in the years to come and/or right now.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My name is Lorenzo Sanchez. I am the Democratic nominee for Texas House District 67 that is in Collin County. So the northern Dallas suburbs, that includes Plano, Allen, and Richardson. What we're seeing here in Collin County is extreme growth. We're having a lot of corporations relocate to this area, bringing with them new employers and also, driving people to come here so they can hopefully find themselves good jobs as well. So we've seen that happening, but we also have a very diverse community here in Collin County, and House District 67 in particular is very diverse. Ethnically speaking, religiously speaking, economically speaking, we have it all. So I think what we've been seeing is just a lot of growth. There's a very high population of college educated Americans here. And I think that's what is also driving a lot of this movement towards a different style of governance in this community.
So a pretty common Democratic playbook in red or purple areas is really to try to court well-off moderate Republicans. But you've taken a different strategy. You focused on, again, issues that really affect working class people. What makes you think that strategy is going to pay dividends this time around?
Yeah, I think people in my community are just tired of politicians saying whatever they need to win their reelection or get their donors to contribute. People want us to be talking about actual issues that are affecting households within our community. So when we were block walking, and we were really fortunate, before the pandemic took place, we still have the largest volunteer organization in the history of our county. And this is for a Texas House race. We knocked on more doors than any other Democratic campaign before us here in our county. And that kind of movement is growing. People are really aware of what's happening. They're tired of these politicians who are just trying to sow division within certain aspects of our community to try to continue to win these elections. And they just want representation that will actually go and try to find solutions to the actual problems that people are facing. So it is those things like healthcare, education, what our economic recovery is going to look like after COVID, gun sense, reproductive freedoms for every Texan, things like that I think is driving a lot of the movement in our campaign with the volunteer base, because they know that I'm not going to shy away from talking about difficult topics if it's something that is affecting our communities and we need to have addressed. I'm willing to have those conversations. And I think that's what people are being really receptive to.
I feel like I'll go out on a limb here and say that you have not been a supporter of Jeff Leach's time in office. When you're out on the campaign trail, what is the biggest element of your pitch? What do you highlight to voters as the main failure of his tenure? And how do you draw a contrast with that? On that issue, what would you do differently?
Yeah, he doesn't represent our community anymore. I don't think he ever did, really. I think people have been tricked into thinking that, they're looking out for our best interests. But like I was talking about the diversity, We have 6 mosques, either in our district or district adjacent. And we have a legislator who goes and passes anti-Muslim legislation. We have UTD within our district, which University of Texas at Dallas, they've been ranked one of the best schools for LGBTQ plus students to attend in our nation. And we have a legislator here who's trying to pass bathroom bills and religious liberty bills that are really just trying to discriminate against people within the LGBTQ plus community. So, like I said, it's really difficult when you're talking to people at their doors. They bring up topics that aren't being brought up by our representative right now. In fact, it seems like he's more willing to go and work on things that divides our community than actually bringing real, substance to the conversation, even of where we need to move forward as a community.
You've touched on healthcare a couple of times here. I know that Texas has the highest number of uninsured people in the nation. Why? Who's to blame for that?
I think our political system is to blame for that, really. There's just not a desire or a will on behalf of the current representatives in our house here in Texas to move forward on it. And we see that even our governor is really opposed to anything like Medicaid expansion. But Texas has given away billions of dollars this last decade by refusing to expand Medicaid. We know as individuals that had we had those billions of dollars, 10 years ago, we'd be getting a return on our investment now. But we have not. So that money was supposed to come to Texans that need it the most, and our legislators have refused to enact those policies to make sure that that money is getting to those sick Texans. But we talk about a lot of things like we have the most hospital closures than any other state in our country. We have one of the highest maternal mortality rates out of any other state in our country. And our politicians continue to be aware of this information and refuse to take action on it. This isn't something that is unique to Texas. These kind of things have happened in other states and they've been addressed. So it's time that we start electing representatives that will do the same thing.
You've touched on several different areas of a healthcare system in crisis. If you were elected and you get to office this fall, what's the most important thing you would like to do with respect to healthcare? What's the priority on day one?
Expand Medicaid. Absolutely. I think it's an economic necessity to get us out of this COVID pandemic. Economically speaking, I think it is the moral thing to do to make sure that people aren't falling behind. We have the most uninsured children out of any other state in our nation, and Texas needs to start leading. We can be a beacon, leading our country forward, or we can be a state that's, dragging the rest of our country behind. And I want us to be a leader in these topics and making sure that we're addressing these issues in really bold manners. But as far as healthcare is concerned, addressing some of the issues I brought up afterwards, not letting those kind of things go away. And also, hopefully, we can get some sort of paid sick leave bill passed here in Texas. It's just so necessary. And it's what people have been demanding since the COVID pandemic has really taken hold of some of our employers and cities. And it's really having an effect on our population here in Texas.
Even moving beyond Medicaid expansion, I understand that you're a supporter of moving to a single payer healthcare system in Texas. What makes you want to take that additional step? Why do you think single payer is necessary to more meaningfully address this healthcare crisis?
And it's, I will say I'm not a doctor. I always tell people that, it's a lot of learning. But from what I've heard and from the experts and the numbers I've seen, it's our path to being able to provide quality, affordable healthcare to every single individual within our state. I think to have anybody within our community who's lacking healthcare and needs it is a health and safety concern to everyone who is insured. So my thing is making sure we continue to talk about those paths that we can take to move forward till we can have a system here in Texas where we cover every single individual at an affordable cost, that they can actually, get to and use that kind of those resources. I think another thing that really always keeps that at the front of mind is seeing the effects that sickness or some sort of disease has on a family member or friend, even if they are insured. So I'll give you an example. One of my roommates has had a previous surgery where he's had internal sutures put in. One night he thought he had ruptured some of those sutures and he was in extreme pain. Instead of going to the hospital, his first reaction was to go grab his laptop to figure out what his deductible and down payment for that visit would be. And when things like this are happening, we need to address them. We know that our healthcare system is broken. Let's come together and build a system that we know will take care of people and actually, provide real substantive care and preventative care for the future as well.
It's obviously a tough time to be running a political campaign where normally you'd like to be knocking doors and seeing as many people as possible. What's been the biggest challenge of running a political campaign during this pandemic?
That for sure, it's the people. I can say 100%. I enjoy knocking on those doors and having those conversations with people. I don't care if they're a Republican or a Democrat. I don't start off telling them what I'm going to do. I start off by asking them what kind of things they want to see addressed by our legislative body in Texas that they feel haven't been either adequately addressed or haven't even been brought up at all. And those kind of conversations and putting myself out there in a way where people can really see me and feel free to ask me questions without, having to have moderators or other people involved on these Zoom calls have made it a little bit more difficult. And I miss that aspect, but we're trying to do everything we can to keep our voter contacts as personal as possible. So after COVID got started, really started taking off here in March, we had just cleared our primary and really took all of our volunteers and transitioned them into field organizers where they were writing, calling the same people, texting the same people with their name. So then the voters in that area had a direct contact who they knew that they could reach out to get any questions answered, either COVID related or about our campaign and what we're trying to accomplish.
How does that feedback affect your pitch or change your pitch, if at all? Like you've talked about some of the policies that you support. What happens when you knock on the door, you talk to a voter and they say, I don't want Medicaid expanded. I think that's a bad idea for some reason. What's your response to that?
It hasn't happened with healthcare yet. Usually with healthcare, that's where I can get them on our side because they usually describe a system of healthcare that we're proposing, where people can actually get in and see doctors and things like that. Um, how do I deal with some of the negatives?
Yeah, what issues do you get pushback on and how do you respond?
Most of it is just absurd lies that have been getting released lately. I know the governor tweeted about our campaign. That entire tweet, I mean, there was nothing of substance in it, and it was all just fabrication. Um, People are going to say what they're going to say. What we're trying to do is get our message out to people about, me being from the community, me being raised here, me wanting to be a champion for our public school system because I've been a beneficiary of that system, and I want to make sure that it exists for future generations. So a lot of it is just negativity from the extreme on the other side. So, people calling for me to be deported because I'm Latino. People, claiming that I'm anti-police, whatever it may be. But that's where we just continue to have the conversations. Our website is very, very thorough. We took a lot of time to give a lot of information to people because there's a lot of topics that may interest certain individuals that aren't being discussed. But we try to put as much as we could up there so we could be as transparent as possible. And really what we're looking for is accountability in our political system, which we have not had here in Collin County, because we've had this decades-long Republican control that I think they felt that they didn't have to listen to the opinions or thoughts of any other side, and that's changing. So that kind of stuff is really rewarding. But yeah, most of the attacks that are being made against me are being made either on a racial basis, or the attacks seem to be the similar attacks that all the other Democrats throughout the country are facing right now, with claims that we're anti-police or that we're going to leave our communities unsafe for any reason. It is just continuing to try to push that narrative, since they really have, at least my competitor has not that much of substance to stand on. That it is what it is.
Thanks, Lorenzo. I want to close out with a couple of questions about you and about your district. Before you were working to flip the state house, I understand that you worked in real estate. On the campaign trail, have you ever used the line, "I flip houses for a living"? And if not, why not? Who failed you?
I flip houses for a living. That is so good. I am so disappointed. And we've been running this race for a long time. And the fact that no one has thought of that, someone's going to get fired.
I respect that kind of decisive leadership. Please rank the following things for me in terms of their importance: giant belt buckle, giant cowboy hat, giant boots.
Oh man. I'm going to go with giant cowboy hat. I mean, I want people to be able to see me from far away, I guess. That's going to be the best way to do it. I mean, the belt buckle would have to be pretty blinged out to maybe catch some people's eyes.
Who you get to have lunch with one of these two people, and you must have lunch with one of them. Neither is not an option. Ted Cruz or John Cornyn?
John Cornyn.
I think I'm just going to leave that there, leave that to the imagination. Are Texas Rangers fans real or a liberal media conspiracy?
They're real. There's actually, and I can say this, I was born in Chicago, raised in this district here in North Texas, and Chicago is a big baseball city. So I don't know if there's that many Rangers fans, or maybe we're just really spread out here in Texas, but there are hardcore Ranger fans. Not as many as I would think that there should be, but they exist out there. They're kind of a mythical creature, though, whenever you see one in nature outside of that stadium.
Dallas Fort Worth Airport or Love Field?
Oh man.
Look, I'm going to be honest. I don't even know the difference. When I fly to Dallas and it gives me those two options, I'm like, I don't know. What's going on there? Help me understand.
Love Field is in the center of Dallas, so it's like right outside downtown. It's very central for me. It's very good to get you anywhere around our country. Dallas Fort Worth is our international airport. It sits in between Dallas and Fort Worth. That one is very, very large, and can get you international places. So I guess if I'm flying international, definitely DFW. If I'm flying here nationally, I'm going to go with Love Field.
Thank you. Sort of the last question. I'll just give you some space to talk things through. The Dallas Cowboys, what's going on? Lorenzo, your thoughts?
I mean, I think we need new leadership in the Dallas Cowboys franchise. I think we have been at the same spot for decades, and it's time for new leadership there as well. We should start that campaign as soon as these November elections are over to see what we can get done with those Cowboys. But I put a lot of the blame on Jerry Jones, since he is the owner and is very involved. I'll let him take credit and blame for their wins and their failures, I guess.
It's good to see you thinking ahead to the next important campaign you're going to be waging. Lorenzo, again, thank you so much for joining me here on the Briefings, Our Future on the Ballot series. To our viewers at home, thank you so much for watching. This will also be available, maybe, if it's a bonus episode, on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be live again at 1:30 Eastern today with another Texan, Julie Oliver, who is running for a seat in Congress. If you have not already, please follow Appeal News on Facebook and The Appeal on Twitter for more news, shows, and updates like this one. Thanks again for joining me. I'm Jay Willis.